This is Kitten Features, and you're listening to ShowX Live with Ken in the student accommodation all the way in Scotland. Wait, that was years ago. You're listening to ShowX Live with your favorite Scotsman Ken, currently residing in the US of A, and Wayne, mostly from Colorado.
Hey, wait a second. I'm on the show too, and I don't get any billing at all? Well, I know how to solve this. Soldater, Fremad, March! You're listening to Show X with our favorite Scotsman Ken, our child of the corn Wayne, currently living in Colorado, and Todd, who now has an army of angry Norwegians at his back.
And they
Enjoy
all
the
have
show.
axes.
Nice. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. You're watching us live here on Twitch, YouTube, and other places you can actually find us, Facebooks and stuff like that. Today on, what are we at? February 21st, 2021. It's 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT, and we are welcome to have you all today. We, there's a lot going on in the world constantly around gaming, technology, and all the things we love. So we're going to spend some time today catching up more on what news has been going on. I know specifically we have things to talk about with both the all-digital version of Blizzcon 2021 that's going on currently, as well as the recent Nintendo Direct announcements and videos they put out there, as well as some things that have been catching up with us over the last few weeks of just items around technology and geekery that we love. So that's going to be our focus on today's show. To start things out, however, we're going to get some catch-up, as it will, with Todd, as he has been playing and focusing some time in a new game for he and the Mistress of Giggles.
Yep.
And we would like to know what's going on with that.
Hey, everybody, I bought Hellgate London.
Oh
well,
my God! You gave my ass.
I did see you play that. I did actually see you playing that, Todd.
I did it. I dropped $8 or $9 on the single player Hellgate London.
How is it?
It has not aged well.
Oh no!
I have to admit to the people that are listening to this now or in the future, I'm not entirely sure what I was thinking at the time when I said it was really good. It still has the best mechanic in all of action RPGs with the little icons down at the bottom of the screen. And as a nice little touch, I don't remember this in the sort of online original version of the game, but they explained to you, like they put some UI stuff in with a single player version to explain to you what the icons meant.
Okay, yeah.
Which makes it easier to fill them in, which makes it easier for loot to explode out of the ground, which I have to admit was a little appreciative of. That was pretty cool. Oof. It is showing its age. I mean, it's 12 years old or whatever, 13 years old, and it feels it. It feels like a 13-year-old game.
Gotcha.
That is not what I was meant to talk about, but I just had to make the joke.
Had to bring it up, though.
I mean, absolutely. But as you may have recalled on this show some time ago, I lamented the fact that I do not have an MMO for which to play with other people. Mm-hmm. And Ionis and I hatched a plan in order to get a consistent group together to maybe do the WoW Classic thing to level through the 5-mans again, or to do something else. Maybe Star Wars The Old Republic was the other one that we kind of had talked about. The Mistress of Giggles was more interested in Star Wars than World of Warcraft. But what we ended up settling on was Final Fantasy XIV Online.
Oh, that's surprising.
And the original release, as I understand it, of the game was very bad. And they took it, they unreleased it and went back to the design drawing board and re-released it, and there was somebody in a meeting at some point that had to have said, what are all the things about World of Warcraft right now that are vexing to people? And can we fix them? And I got to be honest, they did a pretty good job with that.
What's a specific example? Because we were talking pre-show a little bit, but I know for me, I appreciate any game that's in a genre that is aware of the past and what other games have done, and maybe they've played those games and said, while this was a fun time, this piece sucked. And so when they designed their game, they said, let's make this piece not suck. So what's something they've done that's like quality of life or just UI or something better than something prior?
Here's a scenario. Wayne and Ken and Todd and Ionis and the Legend Taker are a 5-person group, and we play consistently on Monday nights, and we run the 5-mans together.
Sounds
good.
But
it's winter break here in Norway next week, so all the school kids are not doing anything at school. And, I took advantage of the fact that the Mistress of Giggles has got the week off. I also may have taken the week off. So I've got all this extra time to play World of Warcraft, right?
Yes.
And so now I'm outside the level range for all of these instance dungeons. So for me, it's not at all hard. But for the rest of the group, it's like normal difficulty because you still all have your lives and your families and work and stuff, right? So, there's always this problem in World of Warcraft of over-leveling. Like, if you're making a specific character for the purposes of doing this 5-man stuff, right, you almost have to, if you know that you're going to have more time than everybody else, you almost have to roll the alt at the same time.
Yeah.
So that you keep the one character in line with the other 4, and then to have the one that just ends up like 40 levels ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, the one you basically are just playing on your own.
Yep, exactly. What Final Fantasy XIV does for the instance content is it syncs you to the level range of the instance. So
can I just interject and say WoW does this as well?
Oh, is that something that WoW does now?
Yeah, that happened at the end of the last expansion.
Oh, okay.
So it not level 60 stuff, like max level is max level, and it's sort of like its own barrel. But everything below you can sync. Same with quests as well. So even if you're in an area that's not really for your level zone, if you're in a party with somebody else, you can just say sync, and you can do whatever you want with them.
All right. Well, so that's something that WoW does do. When I stopped playing WoW, it did not do that.
Yes.
So that's cool. But anyway, like Ionis and I are now at the point where we're about ready to do the first instance dungeon. And what I'm hoping is that we can bring the Mistress of Giggles into the group, and as long as she's within the level range, that we'll be able to go in there as a threesome. It's designed for 4, but we have a full set of the Trinity, so I think we're going to be fine.
Nice.
With two of the key roles being experienced MMO players, and Mog doing the deeps. I think we'll probably be in pretty good shape. So another thing that they did along those lines to sort of combat the overleveling is that all of the jobs have their own individual leveling paths. And that includes not just character classes, but that also includes the gathering and crafting jobs.
Okay.
So you switch jobs by putting a new item in your primary weapon slot or primary hand slot, I guess. So let's say I wanted to be a carpenter, because carpentry is a job that you can do in this world. So I take a saw weapon or saw item, put it in my weapon slot, and I'm converted to a carpenter. And I have my own,
meaning
I go back
work
to level 1. My character is level 1, and I start leveling up as a carpenter. Now I don't necessarily go out into the world, but I get quests. I gain experience every time I make something, and I get quests every 5 levels to do something for the carpentry guild or the
interesting.
leatherworking guild, or the mining guild, or the blacksmithing guild, or the armory guild.
So basically, you can multi-class or multi-trade, right? Skill based just on where you want to spend time. Is there a limit to that you've seen, or something where you can only do so much of one or another?
Not that I've seen. So what you may say is, okay, let's say you got to level 35 in mining, but you're only a level 20 character. Like, your mining gear is not going to be anywhere near as good as the normal gear for your character, because they've got, there's a special set of gear with special stats for gathering and crafting. Well, if you're gathering, you get this ability called stealth, and every character gets this, or let me rephrase that. All of the gathering jobs get this as an ability for free.
Okay.
And so what it does is renders you invisible to mobs that are with up to 4 levels above your level. But your level is the gathering level. So if I make it to level 35, I can be in a level 35 zone and put on stealth, and I'm invisible to all of the like level 38 mobs that may con red to you, right? That will attack you.
It's basically giving you an ability to go gather and do stuff without having to constantly fight just to be in an area.
So I don't have to level my character class necessarily to be at the right level to go and get the crafting materials that I need to level up both my to level up both my gathering character class and my, or let's say, gathering skill and my crafting skill. They're independent. So I could run around the world and go to max levels just by mining.
Okay.
If I wanted to. And then I could do it as a botanist, and then I could do it as whatever.
That's pretty cool.
It's just like, you're getting experience points for all this stuff, but it's not affecting your character level at all. Or it is affecting your character level, but the character level of your main class that you do questing and combat with is not the same as the character level that you do the gathering and crafting with. Sure. And I think that is super neat.
Gotcha.
I like that aspect, and plus I like playing an MMO for multiple reasons. I don't want to just do combat all the time. I also like collecting. I like the economy side as well, so that sounds pretty neat.
Yeah, I was really impressed. Like, I was really worried because I don't know a lot about what's going on inside FF14. As far as like instances and all that stuff. So like I got to level 20 in a heartbeat, it seemed like. And I was just like, oh man, I'm going to be over leveled for like the first set of instances. Like, can I slow this down somehow? And then it was just like, oh yeah, because if you do gathering and crafting, they're like independent experience point pools. And they don't affect your character level at all. So I'm like a level 32 miner and a level 20 blacksmith and a level 10 armorer and a level 22 botanist. And like I just picked up all the gathering and crafting jobs and started knocking out those quests one at a time. And it's like, oh great, I've got this independent experience point based leveling thing. So I always feel like I'm having progression of some sort, and it feels just like a leveling process, but I'm not doing combat at all for most of this. Like, it's all just running around and exploring the world and finding the nodes and doing stuff. Like, it's really slick.
Well, it's funny because I've never played Final Fantasy XIV online, but I have heard about it since it came out. Right. And from the people that I've been around, and this is both console and PC gamers, I have heard essentially nothing but good. And people who have really gotten deep into this game. And it's funny because for me, I freely admit that the MMO mechanic as a whole doesn't hold me, isn't something that excites me. I've proven it over years of trying many MMOs. That I am much more I play a game, I beat a game, I move on to another game. And so sitting in the same world is just like, why am I doing this? What's my next thing? Right. And especially the rinse repeat type things. I'm not big on end content that is essentially just grinding for gears and or item thing, whatever. So for me, it just lost a luster, right? This for me playing WoW was 0 to 60, and then like I beat the game, done, right? Yeah, it makes no sense, but that's how my mind worked. But I have honestly heard nothing but good about Final Fantasy 14, and I'm kind of curious if others in the chat here that are watching us right now do play, because I know a lot of like people that for me were primarily PlayStation owners, right, where they started, console owners getting into kind of their first real MMOs and really just diving deep into Final Fantasy 14 and loving it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was sort of the big draw, is so that the Mistress of Giggles, who much prefers to be on console, can be on console. I, who much prefer to be on PC, can be on PC.
Oh, that's pretty cool, yeah.
And we can still play each other because it's totally cross-platform.
Does it affect communication at all? I mean, you guys are obviously in the same apartment, but like with everybody else, would that affect communication? Like, can you voice chat or is it text?
Good. That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Because one of the problems I've noticed with playing Fortnite with people is if we're not using voice chat, it's super difficult to communicate cross-platform.
So I don't know. I think what is probably going to happen. Ionis and I obviously have Discord. The Mistress of Giggles has Discord too, and she may participate as a listener, but not as a talker.
Sure.
In the Discord, but I could always just shout from my office into the living room too.
Hey, CC more. CC
more. That's right.
She's like, who's Seymour?
Where's my deeps at?
That's funny because that is something that I appreciate. More and more modern games are doing great jobs with in-game communication. Everything from heck, even League of Legends added voice chat if you're in party. Like your friends group party voice chat in game, but having for me it's those ones like I think Apex Legend did it wonderfully. Call of Duty does it great now for the battle royale games. League of Legends does it great with their ping system and stuff. But ways to do actionable just emotes, if you will, in game that are enough to communicate what's necessary. But also the things they're doing to combine communications and chat. One of the problems I still run into or see is that. The chuckle I have is that many console players don't have Discord or know how to use it properly.
Sure.
The ones I know, because Discord, as far as I'm aware, is not built in or baked into the consoles. You can't run it like as part of the console instance.
No, certainly not. What will probably happen is she'd be on Discord on her phone.
Yeah,
so she'd have Discord running on her phone, but probably also listening to something else as well while playing, and that way I can just talk into this microphone and say, "Hey, I need you to X," and I can say it to Ionis as well, and that'll be fine. I really think we're gonna need that kind of coordination because I think what's going to happen is we're gonna try and 3-man or 3-person all of this content that's designed for 4. And again, with the tank and the healer being experienced MMO people, I don't think that's going to be a big problem. But we're gonna find out.
Yeah,
we're gonna find out.
No, that is something I like. I do think that consoles need to catch up with, which is they need to just suck it up and admit that Discord is the now. I don't know if it's the future, but it is the now.
Right. Because it's tough, right? Because they want to have internal mechanisms to force. For example, like when we're playing Fortnite with our friends, 2 of them are on Xbox and the rest of us are on PlayStation, and I'm sometimes on PC. And that's difficult because PlayStation chat or Xbox chat or in my case Discord or whatever else. The cool thing is with Fortnite, you can now use the in-game chat. But then we want to move over to, say, Rocket League, that's entirely disrupted suddenly. Whereas if we use something like Discord that's, game agnostic, you can, and hopefully one day platform agnostic, that would allow us to do that. We tried to skirt around it, actually, this past week, actually, because we were thinking about how we can get past that problem. And we realized there's a PlayStation app you can get for your phone. So, and you can voice chat through that. So we thought if we all did that, it'd work. Problem is, you need to have a PlayStation account that you've logged into a PlayStation with. So not anybody can get the app, right? So you only do it on a friend's PlayStation or whatever, I guess. But it was still a pain.
That's annoying. But that's the problem, right? That's what I'm saying. I still run into that because for me, it's on Warzone and Call of Duty, and we have our one console player. And the challenge being you sometimes get... I find that console players running Discord tend to have less refined settings in their audio, so you get more like open noise background, and they're often playing over
system. They'll have speakers as well as a headset.
Yes, they're often playing over speakers, so you start to get additional noise, where most PC gamers are on headsets or something like that when they're gaming, and so it's just a much more controlled experience. Anyhow, but no, it's interesting to hear that you're really... So far, seems like, Todd, that you're having a good time with Final Fantasy 14.
I'm kind of jamming on it. Yeah, it's been good so far. It's weird. It was definitely designed to be baby's first MMO.
Gotcha.
They spend a lot of time hand holding through. Here's your main city, and we're gonna have you go to all of the parts of the main city, and you're gonna run past all the fast travel points and pick up all the fast travel points, and you're gonna deliver these 4 things to this person. And by the way, that's also the mining guild. So if you want to pick up mining as a job, you can pick it up there, and all that kind of stuff. Like to me, and again, this may be me getting used to being in an MMO again after having not been in since like 2011 or something like that. And I'm just not used to it, but it felt like there were a lot of quests in the introductory city that were just running around and delivering things to people and talking to people, and you need to see this person, and now you're level 5. Now you need to get your first class quest at level 5, and that may send you out into the world. But and I think with the bonus, because we're in the trial period, so we've got bonus XP, and we like out leveled that stuff, or at least I did, very quickly. It was somewhat I felt as if I didn't need to do all that stuff in the main city.
Gotcha.
I was like, I did all that stuff. I'm glad I did, because I can navigate this place so much better now already. So I understand that there definitely was a game design purpose for it all. But I was like 7, or I would say level 7, 8, something like that before I ever walked outside.
Oh,
right. So in WoW nowadays, the game works in a similar fashion where it's very handholdy. Like if you make a new character, regardless of what race you are, what faction, you go to pretty much this one zone, and everybody levels like 1 to 10 there, and it's very handholdy. So there's lots of tutorials, explanation of spells. You don't get your spells as you level up; you get them as you complete quests now for the first 10 levels to try and explain what's happening and what an action bar is, how to move backwards and forwards. Really basic stuff.
Sure.
But the cool thing is, once you've done that once, you can then say, where do you want to start off? And you can say, tutorial land, or you can go, my race's starting zone. Or same with later on as well. Once in the latest expansion, when you complete all the quests, which are very long, it takes about 15 to 20 hours to do all the quests at least, before starting endgame, if you know what I mean. But now, once you've completed that set of quests once, when you go to Shadowlands on an alt, it says, hey, do you want to just skip to the end game and just level through like dailies and world quests, or do you want to do the quests again? It's up to you, and you get to choose. And I find there's actually quite a lot of instances of that throughout WoW now. Whenever you go to different zones and even the older ones, quite often it'll ask you, hey, do you know what you're doing? Do you want to do a tour here, or do you want me just to skip to the questing part? And I really like that. And I think it's a thing that they've retroactively fitted to WoW, but probably because of other MMOs like Final Fantasy that are considering things like that. and good character design and good tutorials at the start and all that.
I will give credit that Blizzard with, WoW has continued to try to keep it up to date. If they, I guess, in the level of mechanics and things like that, and continue to change things. I mean, they did a massive update with Shadowlands of changing the whole leveling structure.
Right.
Which is going to be interesting to talk about as we talk about the news this week, because we do have some discussion about what Blizzard has announced and what they are doing. And
is there anything else you want to say first, Todd, about Final Fantasy?
So just to copy his point that it doesn't work as a multiplayer. I don't know that yet. We haven't tried it. I think we'll probably get to the first instances. This week, and I'll have a much better idea of whether or not this is going to be the game that holds us for some amount of time, or if we're just going to play through the free time and just say, well, that was $10 well spent, and leave it at that. So I will say that it sounds like the Mistress of Giggles is having fun.
That's good.
Which
That's
is
a key
important.
piece.
Which is important, and it's on the platform that she feels most comfortable on. So, like, those two things are pretty freaking important. So, we'll see. I'm excited to try instancing, and I will report. We'll report back if we get a chance to do it, and if not, well, then I'll wait.
Nah, cool.
Also, one more question: do you think you're going to continue to play Hellgate London at all, or are you done with it already?
I may mess around with it some more. It's honestly, it's pretty janky now. At this
I never went through the iterative polish. It just died immediately, didn't it?
Yeah, kinda. There's no nostalgia. No, there's nostalgia for the Icon minigame, and that's it. That's all the nostalgia. Like, I don't know who any of these people in any of the towns are. And like, I used to care because like I did like the game. I bought the books that were based on the game. There was a three book set that came out, sort of akin to the Doom books back in the day, and I bought all three of those and read those, and they were good enough, I guess. But I liked the world. I liked the idea of the world, like the story behind it was interesting enough. But this is not that. I'll say that, and it's too bad. It's too bad.
It is a shame.
Okay.
You feel that a lot when you go back to old games. I think I've experienced that several times. I jump into an old game thinking, "Oh, I remember back in the day when." Yeah. I did that with RuneScape a couple of years ago. I played for maybe a month. I managed to stay on for a while, but it just became too much of a grind. And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's what it used to be like."
Yep.
So. No, good times. I'm glad you're enjoying it. But like I said, that's good to know about Final Fantasy 14. I was chuckling a little bit because their recent announcement was, what was it? Shadow something was their recent one. And the recent WoW announcement was Shadowlands. And so I was kind of just chuckling to myself. That's like,
oh yeah, what is
any
that
level of like, tit for tat that they're doing?
So definitely, I'm not surprised that WoW took some of the stuff that was done in Final Fantasy 14 and other MMOs and like did their own version of it.
Yeah, okay. No surprise.
Like, I'm not surprised by that at all. In fact, that's what software companies do. Like, somebody comes out with a feature and it's like, oh, that's really awesome. Shadowbringers, by the way, for FF14.
Shadowbringers. There you go. Thank you.
Yep. It's so a software company comes out with a feature and all of its competitors are like, oh, that's a new feature. Like, we should do a version of that too. So not surprised that reuse happens. I'm glad because there's some quality of life stuff in there that I think is really important that, at least to me, is unique. to FF14. So I'm having fun. If you are interested, Europe, Twintania, I believe, is the name of the server. And it's got enough people where it's had queues. The queues have been small, but they've had them. So it's not like.
I think their website says some 20 million plus accounts and things like that. It's not like the game is
accounts. Okay.
I don't know. I didn't look specifically at the statistic, but I know it's a big game. You know, I think there's specific ones out there if you do whatever the MMO stats things are.
Yeah, you can look at it's you know, and we picked Twintania because it looked like it had one of the lowest server pops. And we're still getting queues. So that would give you some indication that there's at least a semi-thriving community even on the low pop servers. So that's I think that's a good sign in terms of the long-term sort of health, I guess, of the game. So yeah, first instance hopefully this week. Fingers crossed.
Good luck. Good luck. I hope to hear
It's going to
more
be good.
about
I'm looking forward to it. I haven't done anything like that in a long, long time.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, that'll be fun.
It's going to be a good time.
Nice. All right. Well, like we said, there is news coming out for those people who are playing all kinds of different games, and depending on what platform, game type, or whatever it is you specifically might be interested in, hopefully you've been catching up with or following some of the latest news. The first place I wanted to go to is just that because it is active right now, and I believe still going today, because it only lasts 2 days anyways ever, is BlizzCon. So Blizzard, while in the midst of the global pandemic, is still wanting to make sure they have an opportunity to share with their fans all the new content and things they are trying to provide. So they're hosting a all-digital BlizzCon, and have made some announcements, I guess. I say this, I have queued up here to kind of talk through and look through at least some of the trailers that they presented.
Cool.
And they start off with one for Shadowlands, so into WoW. And so I figured I'd kick over and bring this up and talk about, see what you guys have looked at or heard or seen when it comes to BlizzCon 2021.
The chains of the dominatrix.
So I will admit, I don't know where the storyline of World of Warcraft is today, in this latest expansion and such like that.
Why is Sylvanas Windrunner a bad guy?
Okay, okay. TLDR on the lore here. It's and this is going to be broken and oversimplified, but whatever. Okay, the Horde has for the longest time had a lot of trouble keeping a war chief. Right? I mean, they had Thrall, which was great, and you know, he was obviously like a really neat guy, and everybody liked Thrall. He was Green Jesus, you know. But then Blizzard were like, he's a bit too powerful, a bit too much stuff going on. He's been here for multiple games, multiple expansions. We need to give some other characters the spotlight. So they made him retire because he ended up doing his some duel in the new Draenor, and he challenged Garrosh to a duel, and it was supposed to be fisticuffs only. And then Thrall came out and said, "Yeah, I'm losing." Lightning and lightninged Garrosh, which was a really awesome scene, by the way. And I think he was right to do it because Garrosh was evil in a way. Like I don't know why they decided to do a Mac Garai in a way. It was a bit stupid. Bloody orcs with their honor. Anyway, he used the elements in this dishonorable act, and so the elements abandoned him, kind of, and didn't quite ever work the way they were supposed to. So Thrall became a not shaman anymore. And ever since then, he's kind of been floating around, having babies, and hanging out with his wife. And in the most recent expansion, he's come back. So Shadowlands is here again, and he's off doing stuff, but he's more like a warrior. He tends to use warrior-type moves now. He has an axe, and he does whirlwind and stuff. I mean, he's more of a lore character than he is an active, leader now. He's just somebody who's there occasionally. So that's something that's been talked about this weekend. I haven't looked at the news for Thrall yet, so I don't know what's going on with him. Anyway, since Thrall hung up his hammer, and since Garrosh was defeated, who was also the leader of the Horde after Thrall, and then went over to Trollboy. I can't remember his name.
Vol'jin.
Vol'jin, Trollboy. So Trollboy started doing his stuff. He was there for like half an expansion, and then he got stabbed randomly in a cinematic by a demon at the start of Legion. At which point, the spirits told him that Sylvanas should be the next leader, definitely not Bane, who probably should have actually been. So he was like, okay, I hand over to Sylvanas. And we finally found out why this expansion. The reason that Sylvanas was handed over is because she actually is in line with the spirits of death. So they're the ones that whispered to Vol'jin, hey, give it to her because we're going to be evil and do evil stuff. So she started off fine and seemed like she was doing the right thing. But you know how Sylvanas was raised as a banshee originally by the Lich King?
Right.
Yeah.
But still had free will kind of and stuff. So she's always been really bitter and mad about the whole concept of the fact that her life was taken from her. And then she was really disillusioned with the concept of death and all this stuff. And basically, her arc seems to now be that while she seemed to be evil by burning down Darnassus and trying to cause this big set of big wars and all this stuff, turns out the reason for that is possibly not truly evil. She was trying to fuel the Maw, which is the where all the bad souls go in the Shadowlands. She was trying to fuel the Maw to empower the Jailer, who's the bad guy in the Shadowlands from what we've seen, because he was going to undo the concept of death. His idea was that basically there was no longer going to be life and death. There was just going to be permanence, I guess, or something.
Okay.
At least that's kind of what's being hinted at. Now, it seems now, as we're going through the expansion, that the Jailer has been lying to Sylvanas, and he actually just wants to be a big bad guy, pretty much. And that's what it seems to be. We don't know for sure, but that's all hinted at and stuff. So Sylvanas now seems to be a bad guy. And in the most recent trailer, this is total spoiler alert for everybody who's not watched BlizzCon news, Anduin, the current king of Stormwind, who is Varian's son, Anduin was taken by the Jailer, by Sylvanas at the end of the last expansion, and kidnapped. And he was taken to the Maw, where he was being tortured and kept being told, you need to join us, you need to join us, you need to join us. The Jailer, of course, being the source of death magic, meaning that he's the one who, inadvertently and with other characters involved, but effectively, he made Frostmourne and he made the Helm. This is a bit of a retcon because that used to be Void stuff and other things, but we're going to pretend that had nothing to do with it. It used to be Burning Legion. We're going to pretend that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't Sargeras create the Lich King?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of been retconned. So
Okay.
now it's this realm of death with death magic and stuff, and it kind of makes sense actually. Weirdly enough, I don't know how I feel with retcons because I played Warcraft 3 as well, and I enjoyed that whole storyline. But whatever. That's not the point. The point is that the death magic is a thing, and the Lich King got his helm and sword from the Jailer, effectively, in Shadowlands, and that's how Death Knights were being raised, is through death magic from the Shadowlands in the first place. Because it's all kind of mysterious how Death Knights came around and all this stuff, where that realm of magic exists and what it is. So Anduin, in the most recent trailer, was doing his holy priest thing where he was like, I will never surrender. I'm the good boy king. I have blonde hair and blue eyes, and I'm a good boy. And they were like, okay.
There was another king's son that had blonde hair and blue eyes.
Well,
that did not turn out so good for anybody.
That's exactly what we're hinting at here. So what happened is they went, well, you can either join us or we'll force you to join us. And he went, oh, you have all the power here. Make your choice, Sylvanas. And she looks all like, oh, I don't know what to do here. And yeah, so that was the whole thing. So the trailer came about, and basically you see Anduin walking into, I've not explained this at all, let's just call it Land of the Angel people. They look like angels.
Which is what I was showing a little bit in the trailer here. And we'll continue as it goes through. But he's basically walking through, and they talk about how how he's a king that is seeking audience with, I guess, whoever the main angel type gal is.
Yeah,
or person thing.
She's the Archon. She's just a big angel. It doesn't really matter, honestly. Their lore's a bit silly. So she's just the big angel. They're not like so Shadowlands has got like an infinite set of planes, and you go to the one that suits you most. We only so far have explored four or five planes. So this isn't even all of Shadowlands. We only see a very small part of it. So she's the head of the people who are kind of like holy light people, but also kind of not. They're just angels, pretty much. Anyway, so Anduin walks in, and he's all like, she's like, oh, you escaped the maw. You're the king from the maw. Like, I've been wanting to meet you. And he's like, that jail couldn't hold me, in a gravelly voice. And you're like, okay. And some other dialogue back and forth, and she realizes quickly, oh, I'm not talking to Anduin, king of humans. I'm talking to the jailer. And Anduin magics Frostmourne, a new version of Frostmourne that's been reforged. That looks a lot like his father's sword, which is really cool lore, by the way.
It's definitely a different looking sword from the original.
It looks just like his father's sword, except now it's all deathy and also Frostmourne-y. So this materializes out of nowhere, and he jumps up and stabs the big head angel lady through the heart, seemingly. It was confirmed after this at BlizzCon that she's still alive, so whatever, we'll see what happens. They stole her key, whatever that means. But the cool thing that happened here is Anduin then turned all grey and Death Knight, looking a lot like a certain other prince of humanity who turned bad. As that's happening, you see him looking shocked and sad, and in a sort of like, what have I done kind of look, and that kind of implies that he didn't choose to become a Death Knight. He was forced into it by the jailer. So he's been kind of like the Scourge. He was forced into this role. The last point of interesting lore I'll mention before I end this barrage of WoW talk is as he's walking up to the podium before he's revealed himself to be a Death Knight now, he walks past Uther, who's had his own storyline in Shadowlands, which is kind of...
Oh, that's who that was.
Okay. Yeah, that's Uther.
Okay, that makes sense.
Uther's soul was kind of split by Frostmourne when Arthas killed him. So part of him went to the Shadowlands, other parts of him went elsewhere. It's kind of silly. The light protected some parts of him, but not others. I don't know. It's not been fully explained yet. But anyway, he was kind of... So these angel guys in Bastion that we saw there, they really believe in whenever a soul joins them, in destroying that soul's memories to become true and caring about their cause of preserving Shadowlands and such. It's kind of culty. Everybody keeps talking about how culty they are, and they do seem really culty. So Uther realizes this may be a bad thing, and he kind of rebels against it. But it's kind of implied that he's bad by doing this throughout. So it's almost shades of grey. We don't really know who's good and who's bad. If you join Bastion, because you got to choose a covenant. If you join Bastion, the angel people, a large part of the quest is defeating Uther. He's kind of one of the big bads, and you take him down. And he's now been imprisoned by these people, which is why we see him in that trailer, because you win at the end of the campaign. So when he's walking past Anduin, when Anduin's not even shown to be a Death Knight yet, he grabs his heart. I first thought he was sort of like bowing like to the king.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It was pretty cool. I thought it was pretty neat. But then I thought, wait a minute, he doesn't know he's king. How would he possibly know he's the king, other than the fact he's got cool armor on? Because Uther's been dead a long time, right? And then I realized, if you look where he grabs, and how his face...
now that you've said it, he grabs his heart. Absolutely.
He's in pain, and that's because that's where he was stabbed with Frostmourne. So what he's sensing is the presence of Frostmourne.
Oh, interesting.
Which I thought was a really neat bit of lore, and the symbolism of Uther being, Arthas' original teacher as a paladin, and then here comes past this repetition, this symbolic repetition of Arthas' storyline. So it was actually, there's a lot of problems with the lore that I dislike. I really like this trailer, though. This was pretty neat. I like the fact they caught it such a nice callback to good parts of lore, and the fact that the problems with humanity and how we are fallacious and all this stuff. We're fallible. I love it. So that's what happened in the trailer. That's what was super interesting. That's the most recent lore, and we'll see what happens going out from here.
So at the very end of the trailer, you see him take that new Frostmourne over to this tall, whatever kind of character there is. That the jailer, or what is the bald-headed?
The big bald guy's the big bad. He's the jailer.
Okay, because that's not knowing. I just see that at the end of the trailer that's showing him kind of come up and taking an essence or something from the sword, which I'm assuming he got from stabbing the angel in the heart.
Forgive my ignorance. We're post Sargeras at this point. Sargeras is not...
Burning Legion is completely destroyed, yeah.
Okay.
Burning Legion has been decimated. All the old gods are as dead as old gods can be. In other words, they're probably they can be resurrected and stuff, right?
Yeah. Like never truly dead, but...
We're post Legion.
All right.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So that was a big announcement about Shadowlands and just this whole new section. I don't know if this is because Shadowlands is already out, right? So is this just like the next in-game update that will be coming out?
Content patch.
Yeah.
So it's the new raid. It's the first ever content patch. Yeah. So there's a new raid. There's a new bunch of quests. There's new mounts to be had. There's like
it's the normal progression of all the content. Okay.
And just
making
sure.
And
a new super dungeon,
which is pretty cool. Actually, I like the look of it.
So here's something that I didn't know. I knew that, you know, after like after Vanilla WoW and going into the TBC, like they totally changed instance design, where they went with the whole. It was like Scarlet Monastery was they did Scarlet Monastery and they did like Scholomance or Stratholme or Blackrock Depths to try and figure out what people liked more.
Yeah.
Whether they liked the shorter winged instances or they liked the huge sprawling mazy instances. And what I guess took a bunch of feedback and then made their design based on that. Dire Maul North was wings, even though each of the wings had a fair few bosses in it. But the Burning Crusade, there was a lot of that. Like the instance dungeons in 4 or 5 of the instance dungeons had winged components to it, if I remember correctly. And so now they're talking about the concept of the super dungeon with 8 whole bosses in it. And I had to chuckle a little bit. It's like 8 dungeons, that's nothing. That's like half of Blackrock Depths. Not even.
This is true.
And I guess
it's the era of pugs.
What's that?
It's the era of pugs.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
You know, people jump in for half an hour. They don't jump in for much longer. So this is the fact that they're differentiating them is quite nice. Rather than just saying dungeon, which can mean anything that's not a raid, I think having this differentiation between length is smart, actually.
I suppose. I don't know if the experience to me, I guess, never felt as epic in the shorter winged stuff than spending like a whole evening exploring this huge sprawling mazy thing where like, okay, now we're gonna go in, we're in Blackrock Depths and we're gonna do the arena, and okay, now we're done with the arena, we're headed to the bar, and now that we're done with the bar, we're gonna head down to the forge, and it's just we're killing and so on and so forth, and it's like, okay, we've made it to sort of the end of where one of the paths, because they don't all connect to each other. Now we can take a break, use the bathroom or whatever, and then come back and go other places in this place. And it's like, it's a night, right?
Yeah.
Like you're really ready. It like takes all evening to do like a full Blackrock Depths clear, which I'm not saying that's better. I'm just saying it felt like I have a distinct recollection of doing Blackrock Depths clears. And, there are moments in Dire Maul that were fun. There's stuff that's cool, like the look of that place, the theming of that place, the some of the things that the ogres did in like Dire Maul North were really cool. But I don't know if I ever felt that any of those were more epic than like the big single instance. Doing a Scholomance 5-man was, to start, really freaking hard. And then, again, another big instance, big, mazy, lots of lore, really epic feeling. And I just wonder if they're in the... I wonder if epicness wasn't sacrificed on the altar of accessibility, I guess.
I would just argue that's just be moved to raids now. I mean, I think you still get the feeling of epicness in some instances depending on what you're doing, but
Okay.
they all have different feels. Like for example, I feel like Pandaria, which is the current time walking, by the way, which means that there's an event once a month or so where it's time walking, and basically you can go back to old dungeons from old expansions and you get modern gear for them. And it's fun, right? And right now it's Mr. Pandaria, so I'm getting lots of nostalgic feels for Mr. Pandaria right now because I'm playing those old dungeons, and I'm also having a completely different feel. I mean, right now in Shadowlands, it's all about death and this saving people's eternal souls, and it's this almost religious philosophical experience of dungeoning where you think about all these different concepts.
That
And
seems really heavy.
It is quite heavy.
Okay.
And then you go back to Pandaria, and it's like, oh, all these like pandas who really care about beer. It's just such a different feel, and it's not necessarily good or bad, but they're both dungeons, right? And
Right.
and then you think back to Wrath, that was truly like all about death and despair and failing, and all these like you're dealing with races who have fallen under the heel of the Lich King and all this stuff, and it's again an entirely different feel. And you said yourself, TBC dungeons feel different from classic dungeons, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. I think it's nice that each expansion seems to have these different feels for dungeons. So I think it's intersectional dungeons almost, right? It's not just length. It's also the type of content, the type of feeling you're trying to get from these dungeons.
Yeah.
Epic isn't the only thing that's good, I would say.
No, that's fair enough. I just don't wonder. The MMO space has never figured out how to manage the difference between the raider and the non-raider, right? So
Agreed.
there's all this content that a majority of players don't do,
Yeah.
and in lots of cases, a super majority of players don't do. And
they have helped with that somewhat with LFR as well, because I'd say most people who hit max level probably try out LFR at least once.
okay,
So I'd say most people don't get the normal raids. Like if you go with a guild, yeah, that's definitely like still maybe 5% of people. But I'd still say that they've made that somewhat by having this middle ground of LFR. So it doesn't feel quite so scary because you're in the same boat as another 24 people who have also never been there before, or only been there a couple times.
okay. And I would really love to see the metrics on that. I'm curious. What's that?
Me too.
Oh yeah, I'm curious as to how successful that is. Like I'm sure it's successful because the metric they're measuring by is participation, and the magic number is 50% plus one. For that kind of metric, but thinking back to something like Destiny 2, like there was a period of time where the Destiny 2 participation rate in the raid content was 30% and the clear rate was 10.
Oof.
Right? And Twitch and the Destiny 2 Twitch directory and gaming YouTube is like, oh, we got to have more raids. It's like, why? Like everybody's doing the repeatable content at max levels and nobody's doing the raids, which would lead you to believe that the raids aren't fun.
Yeah. Or
right?
terrifying or whatever, yeah.
Well, I mean, some of and again, the Destiny 2, they were highly technical, and there are only 6 people, and so I don't know. It's I really struggle with how you manage the difference between the raider and the non-raider. Like you have to provide incentive to get people to go to these places because they won't go unless they're given incentive, which should tell you everything that you need to know about raiding in the first place, right? Like if people aren't going on the intrinsic value of going, like there's a problem there. But then you have all of the competitive aspects, like if the people who raid have objectively better gear and just outperform their peers in stuff like PvP, And like, I don't know anybody who's nailed managing that gap.
No, I agree with you. I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because effectively, what's the difference between a dungeon and a raid? It's really just the number of people, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what if you had a dungeon that was entirely scalable up to X or to N, let's say?
That's an interesting idea.
Well, there's a question there, right? Because they've always had the idea of a raid requires a certain number of people, and thus is harder, is bigger, is more epic, whereas a dungeon only doesn't necessarily need a full 5-man or something like that to accomplish because that's always been part of that draw, right? Is that, well, a raid should be epic because you have to get 25 people together, or I guess now it's 10 people together to do it, where it all stems back from the classic 40-man, right? Where a raid required at least like 35 competent people that are geared correctly to accomplish the raid. And then, so it became this massive undertaking that you could feel a sense of accomplishment different from just doing a quest or just doing a dungeon, because it was managing a large group of people going through this, supposedly, right? The idea being you need 40 heroes to take down this iconic enemy.
Sure.
That 5 people in the lore would never make sense.
Right.
And so I understand the difference.
Yeah, and it can't be too easy, because if it's too easy, like the top 1% of players are going to finish the whole thing the first week.
Yeah.
And then what are they going to do? They're not going to play.
Yeah.
And
which admittedly, right? That's something
I say unfortunately, for good or ill, I'll say it that way. Perception being reality. If your number one guild that's supposed to be dumping the most amount of time into this game is not playing your game, like that, I guess that's bad optics.
I mean, it can be, but that's something I've always struggled with, though, right? Is that I have been comfortable with the idea as a gamer that when I did play WoW, I didn't raid because I did not want to go through the rigmarole of waiting an hour for people to get queued up and together to do it. Right? I did it like one night of hitting Molten Core or something like that. I was like, well, that was an experience. That's interesting. That's not how I want to spend my time gaming. And I personally never felt bad that I would not see that content. I was like, I don't want to go through what it takes to do it. And so I'm okay just writing smaller instances and dungeons.
Sure. And there's been a revolution since Molten Core, right? Which is the prevalence of both YouTube and streaming.
Yeah, you can now see all the things.
Right. So rating hasn't been an arbiter of player skill since 2007.
It's been a long time. Well, ever since people started making guides.
And I want to differentiate between world firsting and rating, right? World firsting is an arbiter of player skill, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like any of the guilds that go through in the first week and do this stuff blind, like all the props in the world. But after that, once all the guides are out, what is rating? You're net decking a character build and following directions. Now you're supposed to know how to follow directions since you were 6. Because if you can't follow directions, you're not supposed to get out of kindergarten. So you've all gotten out of kindergarten, so you know how to follow directions. Net decking a character build is trivial, right? All the math, all of that stuff is reverse engineered before the content ever comes out.
Yep.
So take these talents, cast these spells in this order. That amounts to just following directions too. So anybody who's 6 should be able to raid.
Well, and that's something though that I know, but that's something that just it boggles me because why I don't care about raiding, because for me when I played, it was one thing when we were all as a group trying to figure out the mechanics of a boss, of a fight, of a dungeon ourselves. And thus there was communication and trial and error, and that part was kind of fun. It was figuring out the puzzle. Once it's been solved, and all you have to do is go look it up, it's meaningless to me. Now you're just, like you said, just following directions. And
I disagree. I think discovering and working out for yourself is much different than it being available to the general person. I mean, when you cook, you don't and you follow a recipe, that doesn't mean it's going to be meaningless. You're still going to enjoy yourself, and you still learn along the way, even if you're following a guide effectively, right? And I think it's the same. This is
what your goal is. If your goal is the joy of learning how to cook and experimenting with it, that's one thing. If your joy is just, I want to eat the food at the end, and that's like the equivalence, I just want the items, yeah, that's the case. But my problem is what I'd run into is groups not willing to accept somebody wanting to learn the process themselves. Because it became, just like the challenge of in an MMO, one of the reasons I tend not to play, is I rarely, if I'm playing with other people, have the time to read a quest or understand lore or do anything, because people are like, are you kidding me? You're reading the quest? Why have you just accepted and joined in and are running with me right now? Why am I waiting 30 seconds to a minute for you to, heaven forbid, enjoy the depth of the game? We're supposed to just be doing the action. And that's one of the first things that turned me off to basically all MMOs, is because it became, I don't read anything. I just click the button, see what what I have to do, the action, and now I just have to perform the action to make sure my number goes up. That's what pissed me off.
Right?
No, you're right. But when you start playing with groups, I find that the lowest common denominator becomes, why are we waiting on you? And people, because there's now this expectation, be it right or wrong, that they've watched the pros, the experts, the firsts, right, showcase this is how you do it, and it's efficient and it's perfect. Why aren't you doing it the way that the pros do it, right? Haven't you already watched all the guides? Haven't you already watched how you're doing it? How dare you have a question and aren't already experienced at this? And that's always annoyed me.
I've had some bad experiences because you're talking.
I had lots of bad experiences. Well,
yeah,
but I still see that. I still see that when I've tried other MMOs. I've tried it with other MMOs where that starts to still cater out. That when I'm doing the leveling process and it's by myself and I can do it at my pace, it's wonderful and I can get in depth with it. That as soon as I'm introduced to other people and they are now waiting on me or have an expectation to my performance, it becomes, why aren't you doing it the cookie cutter way that I believe you should have already done it? And if I don't fit the exact mold, and the only way I can break that is if I have a hand-picked group of 5 friends, right? 4 or 5 friends.
What I was going to say.
Once it gets beyond that,
the game, the problem is people that you're having, right?
But that's what I said. That's one of the general issues with MMOs. And I ran into it the same way like Todd talked earlier about games where some people have more time, more speed, whatever. Now, admittedly, I'm just bitching about MMOs, not the mechanics. I'm bitching about MMOs, the people I've run into, things like that. What I do want to do, because we've talked about some of these things, we've kind of gotten off the news a little bit, is take a break, let people to go recharge, and talk about...
Just before we do, I've had one thing I've been wanting to say since Todd's third last thing he said, and I've been trying to hold on to get back to.
Yes.
So I can't even remember what it was. I wanted to bring up League of Legends for some reason.
Okay.
Okay. Balancing issues when it comes to raids and designing of raids, and whether they should make more raids or dungeons or whatever, and who they should design them for, and whether it should be the top 1% or not. In League of Legends, a lot of the balancing they do of characters is based on how the pro players play. So quite often you'll find, for example, I don't know, a character that nobody ever plays gets a massive rework because 3 top players out of 100 use it, right? Even if it's got less than 0.1% replay rate. Or a character who wins way too much in the lower levels gets buffed again because the pros have been using it and it isn't getting the same level of win rate. Right, so you'll find that they tend to redesign the game based on the top 1%, and I think there's something to be learned from this. And it's not just that Riot are dumb, right? I don't think that's the outcome here. I think the reason that they do that is because League of Legends is so heavily based on esports and Twitch and people watching other people play. So that top 1% or 0.1%, while barely even an nth of the player base, it's still so important that what is viewed for that game is balanced correctly.
So
because if somebody breaks a bug or he does something ridiculous in the top play, that reverberates way further than an actual bug in the real game. Weirdly enough,
I am really, really glad you brought that up because we're going to talk about Diablo after the break, and I have some mockery to do relative to that. Not really about the games themselves, but about the way this stuff was presented.
Okay.
And you reminded me of something that I have to remember to take into account whilst I'm mocking after the break.
All right. So, no, with that, we'll come back. I mean, there is a discussion to be had about what is the right mechanism to balance for in any game. And for me, my first response is somewhere like 98th percentile versus 100th percentile or, 30th percentile, right? That you go towards the top of the bell curve, but not, or like the trailing edge of the bell curve, like towards the end, but not just the majority, so people have something to work towards. It's hard to say. But we will come back. We're going to talk more. We're going to talk a little bit more about what BlizzCon has announced, as well as get into a little bit of what Nintendo Direct brought out after this break. For the break, I'm going to play, because we've been talking Blizzard content, an OC remix song of Diablo, Wet Grass Inspired is what it's called, from Amy Evil. So we'll play that during the break. It'll be just under 4 minutes, about 3 minutes, 40 seconds, and we'll be back right after this. So with that, let's see everybody go refuel, recharge, regenerate. We'll be back right after this.
You're listening to ShowX on VtWProductions.com.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the show. Making sure I actually click the right buttons to turn on the co-host this time. Last week. I mean, not that user error ever happens.
With Todd and Ken as background video characters.
Yeah, look, right. Watch them emote as Wayne decides to carry the show with his thoughts.
If you can't hear me, I'll give the Team America World Police threat symbol.
Because, as was mentioned in the during the break by Hando and stuff, there was news beyond, World of Warcraft from Blizzard. We're going to discuss more of what was coming out of it. We'll get through some of it a little quicker. Again, I'm basing it off of some of the trailers and such. One of the ones that came up shortly thereafter was the Warcraft Classic, because they're still pushing the Progression in Classic. And for them, the big one was that they have announced that they are moving Progressing Classic into Burning Crusade.
So can
you imagine this being done in any other product? Like, here is the classic TV, like with it's grayscale, no audio. You have to tune the thing in the back yourself, and then now we're introducing color. Can you imagine that being a thing with anything else? But with video games, it's acceptable.
Yeah, well, okay, but weird. They do that. They do that with movies and shows and stuff all the time. Anything that's a remake.
Well, yeah, but not such a grand scale.
It's honestly, it's somewhat of a recent phenomenon. Like just the direct. There was this thing that was out 25 years ago, and we're going to remake it in honor of its 25th anniversary.
I mean, yes, there's been a very specific. Gaming has it different than others, like Command and Conquer. Their redo the. You just name it from the classic thing that have come out. Now, granted, for games it kind of makes sense because what do? You take the exact same core game mechanic, put flashier graphics, clean up the soundtrack, and make it so it actually works in a modern game engine without hacks. And you can re-release it.
I'm watching this trailer and I'm getting all the feels.
So that's the funny part, Todd.
The last one of them.
As much as it's like meh, but it's classic and it's one of the content that you have forever said is one of your favorite.
Oh no, it is all downhill from here.
And so with that,
it is like it off a cliff too. By the by, yeah. So it looks so good. Here's the thing, right? They've got this huge opportunity. Commercials on our. What is that?
Well, I skipped it as soon as I can.
I'm kidding. They got this great opportunity, right? There are lessons to be learned that we all went through the first time around for the Burning Crusade that they could fix, right? I'll give you one, and it's one that Final Fantasy XIV does, just to make a comparison. Instanced gathering nodes. Right?
That's actually one of those things I think is a big quality of life insurance for most people.
Guarantee you there are going to be bot gold farmers up on the elemental shelf in TBC that you have to go to in order to get the materials necessary to make craftable epics, right? Which I think basically was done for the first time. I mean, I think there were a couple. There might have been like a blacksmithing recipe that would result in an epic, and I guess, it was what was it? The Arcanite Reaver, right? Was a craftable
Arcanite Reaper.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That was a craftable epic, but the craftable epics for the tailors were basically available to anybody because you could get all the mats, but the toughest part of that whole thing was going to the elemental shelf and trying to compete with bot farmers, essentially,
to actually get materials,
killing the elementals to get the motes or whatever it was that you needed in order to craft this stuff. So there's a lesson to be learned there. If you instance the elemental shelf, like that problem goes away. Now the motes aren't worth very much on the auction house, but honestly, I
Well,
don't really care
that's not
about
supposed
that.
to be the point, is it? Right? It's not supposed to be about the economy of it. It's supposed to be that that's just something you need to actually craft those things.
No, it's part of the progression path.
Yeah,
And it's
that's
a
where.
part of the progression path that's available to everybody, like we were
Yep.
talking about before the break. I mean, I
Yeah.
saw that and I was like, oh man, did we make a mistake? Should we be doing TVC? Because TVC would be pretty
Hey.
dope.
Hopefully they'll figure something out with it and they'll do something because people are playing classic. They'll enjoy it. Now, another thing they did show, though, that's new IP from Blizzard. What? Not new IP, sorry. New iteration of IP is whatever they're doing now with Diablo 4. And they specifically showcased in the trailer a new class, right? Because as they talked about in the conversation outside of just the trailer, one of the most exciting things you can do in a Diablo game is introduce a new class to play. And so with that, they came forth and they did this neat little video talking about the process or like the character of it. And I think actually the more interesting part beyond just the like story, because admittedly I don't know the story, is focusing on the character itself and that of being a rogue. That they're introducing a rogue class into Diablo 4.
Oh, neat.
And they're talking about some interesting or weird thing where it's something about someone collecting ears that I do not understand. Looks a little gruesome, but is apparently a big part of it. And so that is a thing.
Wasn't it the assassin character in Diablo 2 would collect ears?
I don't know. That's the challenge.
There's somebody in a previous Diablo game collected ears.
Okay. Well, then maybe that's a throwback too, because they said in the rogue that it is like previous class, but specific to itself and how they're doing in the new things, right? Yeah. And like all the Diablo games, right, it looks neat. It's got the isometric. It's very clean. The animations are looking fun. It looks like almost over the top with the number of characters that are, mobs you're fighting against and kind of things. I honestly I think personally, Diablo is just really the modern Gauntlet. Like that.
It really is.
The way it plays, it is absolutely what Gauntlet would have become.
Yes.
Now I'm curious, and I don't know if you guys know or not, is Diablo 4 still being pressed to be playable on all things, including the phone? Because I remember that was the thing that came out a couple years back when it was like, well, everybody's got a phone in their pocket.
I don't think that's the point.
I don't think it's Diablo 4. There was another thing called Diablo
Immortal.
Immortal.
Immortal. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Because that's where I was like, I was trying to remember if that was part of this whole thing.
No, that was given out to some Chinese company to make, and I've heard nothing about it since. And I don't believe that BlizzCon they talked about it at all, which is surprising because I believe there's something like 3 different Warcraft-related mobile games being developed right now, but they're not talking about it because I think what they want to do is just sort of like release it without any advertising,
just as I keep hearing the term a shadow release, where it just kind of comes out and is done.
I'm expecting that because the public backlash would be too much, I think, otherwise. But they also know they'll make money off of the whales, so they do it.
Okay, so then an actual one that they did talk about then after that from 4 was the remaster of Diablo 2.
Okay. I really need to. I don't care that there's a remaster of Diablo 2. Like Diablo 2 was a great game.
Well, so that's the key, right?
This was back in the time frame when Blizzard was capable of making great games. Oh, like you smirk. They blew World of Warcraft. Since like 2011.
Well, my argument was once World of Warcraft came out, they stopped innovating, and they started
they blew the CCG so that you could play that on your phone. The Warcraft remastered or Warcraft 3 remastered.
Warcraft 3 Reforged. Yep.
Yeah, was reviled.
That was terrible
by the community.
I don't think the fact that they tried to make it was bad. I think that could have been amazing. I was very excited for that.
Sure.
I think the problem was that they only had, I think, something like 10% of the original developers available for it, and they also had like a third of the timeline. Well, so they ended up just
fact that it was that it was a development cash grab versus an actual effort to build a good product.
Yes.
That's I think what you're speaking to. Mm-hmm. And so
that's a big part of it. That's a big part of it. So I mean, let's be real. Diablo 2, again, as I said, great game. Not surprised at all that it's getting a remaster. I'm worried that the remaster is being outsourced. That is concerning to me. And I have.
I'm not actually that worried about that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I saw that the people who were remastering it were quite trustworthy. Didn't they make some other really popular good games?
Very, very possible.
Well, but I will say that watching the trailer of Diablo 2, I think they did the right thing with this compared to some of the other ones, like the Warcraft 3 one stuff. They showed, here's original gameplay. And actually, I will say I went a step further, and I didn't just watch the trailers. I actually went and watched some of the BlizzCon developer conference stuff.
Yeah.
And they spent a lot of time talking about how they went back to original assets in Diablo 2 that were never really visible in game. One specific thing that they mentioned was a scene where there's like hanging food, like racks of meat, and there were garlic things hanging there. That when you look at the game, all you really see is like 3 or 4 pixels of white pixels because of how old the game is 20 years ago. Yeah, and the sprites. And they actually found source material that was done and rendered in full 3D that rendered that scene, and they used that to help influence how they've built up the new rendition of it. So if nothing else, what I've heard over the years, right, because I played Diablo 2 for a minute, and it's unfortunate because that's one of those games that I've heard from a ton of people was just one of the best dungeon crawl type games ever made.
Really good. Really good action RPG.
Like pinnacle of that kind of series, right? What really, I think, launched more so than Diablo 1 ever, that Diablo 2 was like, this is how it's supposed to be done. And
we would not have any of the subsequent Diablos or Titan
Torchlight
Quest
or
Path of Exile
any
or
of those
Torchlight
things.
Or any of those. Yeah, Borderlands. We would not have any of that stuff.
And I've heard multiple times when Diablo 3 came out and the discussion about Immortal and Diablo 4, people always compared back to Diablo 2. So in a lot of ways, it makes sense to me that a company is going to spend that kind of effort, or at least do something with it. From what I'm seeing, because I appreciate that they at least did the direct comparison, character, scene, creatures, old content, sprite-based, new content, all 3D, shiny and pretty. And it looked pretty solid. So as long as they keep the right game mechanics and do the minor tweak that I hope all games do, which is refresh the UI, refresh the what we talk about the quality of life type things, then it should be an amazing thing for people who didn't get their jazz off of Diablo 3 and because of that aren't as excited about Diablo 4. Well, here you go, get the shiny version of 2 and enjoy it.
Yeah, if they don't do the same mess ups that they did with Warcraft 3 Reforged, I think it's a great idea. I think it's really neat. I think it's an obvious move for the company to make. Because people, like you said, it has such a big following to this day. I'd say the echoes of how it affected the culture behind the creation of new video games has been massive. So, yeah, why wouldn't they do it, right? Like from their standpoint.
In general. Well, and so the other one I wanted to bring up from Blizzard as a whole.
Hold on. We got to talk about this Diablo 2 thing just a little bit more than this. I'm sorry. I have a real problem with the way they organized the conference itself.
Okay.
In which they had a Diablo 2 speedrunner sort of act as the moderator of this this whole thing. And here's why I say that. I think the greater gaming industry has a problem with relying on Twitch and gaming YouTube, or not relying on, allowing, maybe is the better word, allowing Twitch and gaming YouTube to influence design. None of these people are game designers broadly.
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee that any of the game design changes that they come up with are game design changes that have the good of the game in mind rather than the good of their channel in mind.
Okay. I can see that. They're pushing their own brand.
And
these people are influencers.
And the good of their channel and the good of the game are not the same things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so good for this guy, right? I don't want to bag on the guy who got tapped to moderate this thing. Like, good for him. He's been playing Diablo 2 for something like 16 years and been streaming and doing videos about it for like 10 or something like that, I think he said.
Okay.
For a long ass time. So the fact that Blizzard decided to tap this guy to moderate the thing, like, good on you, bro. Like, way to make it.
Hey, his own cred. Yeah, sounds good.
There's a larger discussion to be had in the gaming industry at large, right? About whether or not we should be letting influencers influence game design, and I don't think we should, for the reasons I stated before. We don't need to get into it. The guy was a fan. I was going to make fun of him for filleting the developers of this thing, but I don't think that's fair. If you've played the same video game for 16 years, obviously you're a fan in a big way. I don't think I've ever loved anything that much. So
yeah, that's to the point where if they don't mention Diablo 2 at that guy's funeral one day, they've not really gotten who he is.
yeah. Exactly. So, like,
I will agree with you. I don't think being an influencer suddenly provides you a level of expertise to therefore drive what development of a future game might be in any form. That's a step too far in my mind. That's what your developers are paid for.
and by the way, shout out to Hando, who said, "Stay a while and don't shoot the food." To which I respond, "Stay a while, and Red Wizard is about to die."
Yes. Oh, man. On my emulation machine, I was just playing some Gauntlet.
Good stuff. Love Gauntlet.
So the last thing I do want to bring up about Blizzard, and just call it done there, and I don't have a lot of video to show for it because it was no new trailer. It was just a lot of developer talk. And that is Overwatch 2, which is their squad-based, if you will, FPS, role-based FPS type game that I may sound a bit jaded, cynical, or biased on this, but I listened to a lot of developer comments about it and walked away going like, so this is just the patch they're doing to Overwatch, right? Versus a full-on 2 release. Well, and I agree, Ken. Since the get-go, since they first talked about Overwatch 2 and they showed ish trailer and talked about it, I basically my whole time was saying, this isn't a 2. This is just the natural progression you do to keep a game alive and keep it relevant if that's your goal. And so I'm so confused by what Blizzard is trying to sell as a 2.0 version of Overwatch.
It's very simple to understand, Wayne. Basically, patches are free, so they don't make money from patches. But a new game, that makes lots of money. There's the understanding you need.
I do not disagree with you, and
that is deliciously cynical, Ken.
And simple, which I appreciate.
I mean, and so cynical. I feel like I have to top it in some way so that I can maintain the title of show cynic.
Can we just also stop calling Blizzard and call them Activision, because Blizzard died a long time ago. Like the actual team that that was called Blizzard, that was like 15 years ago they were absorbed. I mean, how many of them exist? Can you imagine any other company being absorbed by, I don't know, Microsoft or whatever, and then 15 years later you're still calling them original game company name? You wouldn't.
And EA's at least got the good sense to just kill the studios outright, right?
Yeah, just absorb, take over, sell off.
The Westwood Studios brand.
Oh yeah, yes.
Gun.
Oof.
The difference is Blizzard has a name, right? There's a reason we keep saying it. It means something, and that's why we shouldn't be saying it. We're giving them power that they no longer have.
Oh, and it used to mean something.
Yes.
Well, it still does to a lot of people.
It's been a long time.
And those people are easily led. I'm just kidding. Like if you love it. If you love, there's a period of time where I loved the Blizzard brand. I mean, for God's sakes, I started a podcast that ended up on the World of Warcraft podcast station.
Based solely on that.
It's not like we didn't have the love, like we did. I will always be bitter for the atrocity that is Hearthstone design. Like when your most fun variant of Hearthstone is the massively RNG heavy battleground variant that you can only play casually, it says something about your game that you're trying to turn into a competitive CCG.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that should tell you something.
Oh, I loved Hearthstone. I just hate the fact that they release so many expansions so frequently, so quickly, and then the only way to actually have any winning hands ever is to buy, like, put so much real world money into the game because the dailies aren't even enough to get you to catch up even slightly.
Here's the thing. I would be happy. I would be happy to buy cards. I'm happy to do that. I did that with Magic the Gathering for 5 years. Right? I owned at least one display box of every expansion pack from, I think, 95 through 99. Like, I'm perfectly content to pay for product. I want to be able to play Hearthstone with my friends. Plural. Not with one friend, and then one other friend, and then one other friend, while the other two friends are playing, and everybody's got to sit around and wait. I want to play a 4-person Grand Neely with all of my friends, where we're all playing at the same time. And you don't even have to balance your card sets around that because it's just casual. There's no progression. I don't care about the progression. I just want to play an online CCG with my friends that's got a really good network back end.
You can do that nowadays.
We can't do that. You have to net deck a stupid build. You have to go into the stupid competitive thing and play kiddie pool shallow net deck v net deck coin flip retard stuff.
Yes.
Boring. Boring.
All right. So we have harkened on Hearthstone, which had no announcement this week. And has nothing to do. We're going to go on to another company that we can beat on in direct, and that is Nintendo. And so I'm going to kick over because Nintendo Direct came out on the 17th here and had several videos and trailers because as Nintendo does. And it's funny because leading up to it, there were so many things I heard from people talk about their hopes, dreams, and wants from Nintendo to push something new and exciting that would make them just squee over what Nintendo is going to bring to them. To the extreme of they wanted to hear about the new like Switch Pro hardware that they hope someday may come about. All the way down to its 35th anniversary of various games and things like that they were hoping to see the next version or iteration of. And I will admittedly say I don't have a Switch, but we'll put out there that I was not impressed. What I saw was the announcement of maybe a new JRPG, because they always throw something out there. I'm going to skip through the trailer or the actual gameplay of this stuff and what they're showing a bit to the no question, like this is just their go-to. A couple new Switch characters for the Melee or whatever version of Smash Brothers they're on.
Yeah.
They have like 2 new characters in Smash. And as every time I hear from people, it's like 2 characters we don't care about. Like it's not the characters anybody's asking for, but characters that when people see, they're like, I mean, cool. We'll take it.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. More characters is always good. Like variety is the spice of life.
Right. But it's nobody that the characters that people are actually like, why isn't this character in the game? Or why isn't that? It's just like, I didn't even think about that IP. Sure. Let's bring that character into Smash so that we can continue to milk that one IP as hard as possible. So I saw that from Nintendo. What else did I see? So skipping ahead a little bit. Yep, that's all the same discussions. Oh, the announcement of basically bringing more IP over from systems that already have it. So you now get Fall Guys on Nintendo Switch. That's now that it's no longer trending, I guess. I don't know.
That's exciting. Good. That's good.
The other things I saw.
By the way, this long to do it, considering that how small is that game? By the way,
dude,
I'm pretty sure you can get a team of devs to make that in like a week if they knew what they were doing.
And all you're doing is porting it, right? Essentially.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't understand why this is taking so long.
Well,
they've got.
That's because you never know. It's so weird. Like think about this. In 1985. in 1985, Nintendo was light years ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
Yes.
Light years. You think about the Atari 5200 or 7800, the
Yeah.
Intellivision, Coleco, and the Nintendo Entertainment System, and how far ahead the NES was.
It was the first one to bring arcade gaming to the home. It really was.
I don't know if I'd say that. There were tons of arcade games on. I mean, don't get me wrong. The 2600 ports of those arcade games were absolutely.
I was going to say, I played Pac-Man on Atari.
No,
and that is not an arcade game.
No, garbage.
Hot garbage.
Part of the reason why the video game industry in America went Tango uniform at the end of '82, beginning of '83. E.T. the Extraterrestrial being the other.
Yeah, the big one.
the other reason. But all I'm saying is, like, I had Burger Time for the Intellivision. I had Bump and Jump for the Intellivision. I had the Coleco port of Donkey Kong to the Intellivision, which was not very good. I had Frogger for the Intellivision. I had a bunch of arcade games for the Intellivision. So there was arcade gaming. Was it as good as what came out on the NES?
It's the smoothness, man. It was the smoothness. It was the difference between Atari, where it was kind of this clunky thing that, yes, I was gaming on my television,
right,
to when I would go to the arcade and it was a purpose-built machine and it would just flow. NES brought that to the home. When I first played Super Mario Brothers on NES, it was like, dang, look how smooth and fast this is, right?
Yeah,
and then every game that followed it was like that. The difference between...
And then the guys at InSoft made a PC version, and Miyamoto said no.
Dude, yes. Those are so good. Anyhow, Nintendo now, right? What are they doing? They're releasing a bunch of, I don't know, games with the characters. The new Mario Golf, which is like...
Looks good.
Really? I mean, yeah, but
sure.
I was doing Link's 386 back in the 80s, right? I mean... Golf is nothing that exciting, and it's just the known characters. So the fact that it's on the Switch, it's like, how far past time is this? This should have been out on the Switch 3-4 years ago.
Can we finally have the conversation? Has it finally been long enough for us to be able to have the conversation that Nintendo has capitulated a long time ago in the console war?
Oh, they did that years ago.
They just gave up.
Yeah, they even said that. They said that the PlayStation and Xboxes are not their competition. Their closest competition is the phone, and they provide these weird, different experiences.
I was just about to say that they are by a long way the world's best mobile developer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
but it still bothers me because they're playing like this. They're playing, but they're trying to play both sides.
Right.
Because they're still trying to say that their games are of a, full console somehow.
But we have Smash quality. Y'all.
Well, that's what they do, right? They're leading on IP that is easy to render, easy to perform, and doesn't really take anything hardware-wise. That's why there's already emulators for the Switch today and not generations ago.
Because we have Switch and Kart and Smash. Because we have Smash and Kart and Party, yo. We're super serial.
Right. Well, and I throw it out to the audience because I have friends at work that are going to tell me they're all this stuff from Nintendo or whatever that they're excited about. What did I miss? Okay, Plants vs. Zombies, some 3D
Nintendo fans, man. That's just what they're like,
But I'm just wondering because I heard so many people hyped.
Cardboard once and people got excited.
Oh jeez,
Nintendo fans, they just love that.
Thank
stuff,
you.
Man.
That is true.
With the logo,
Professor, Rear Admiral, the hits of Sith.
Oh man. So okay,
read everybody.
The one I will give
third show very different from the 7:00 show.
The one I'll give any highlight to Nintendo for, because I heard it from a multitude of friends who were actually excited for, and that is this RPG that's coming out apparently. What's this one called? I saw it on here. what is it? Triangle Strategy, I guess, is what this one's called. That a lot of people I saw were like, oh my. And it seems to be a kind of a combination of Final Fantasy Tactics and some things like that. But looks like a big, and I give them credit. They do something with the way they're rendering the 2D plus engine of it, where it's still the sprite-based 2D, but they're doing motions and stuff of the world that are pretty refined and look pretty. But I don't know. I guess, is it just to me that it's all just iteration, I guess? That I have not seen innovation from Nintendo in so long. That, and maybe it's just because I don't own a Switch, but I look at these things and I'm like,
because they're a company. You know, if you look at it, they have a bunch of shareholders that they care about, and you know, if they pitch the idea of, hey, we're thinking of making this competitive new console or this new game IP entirely that doesn't have Mario in it, they'll just look at them and say, why would you possibly do that when you could just put Mario 17.5 out, paper edition, and and suddenly, you know, the people will just spend, you know, 10 million, 20 million to get that version, you know, like, or you could release Pokemon Red, Yellow, and you know, and they're effectively the same game with slightly different Pokemon, but people will go and buy all three because that's, I mean, I know it's an edgy one because my nostalgia was heavily in that as well, but it was a pretty dastardly marketing tactic, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
yes.
And they've been doing it wrong this whole time, right? So they've been doing. First of all, they should have done red, green, blue, right? RGB, for the colors. It should have been red, green, blue.
That'd be too meta for most of the fans.
There should have been 256 iterations or 255 iterations of all three of those. And they should be using polygons now. Like, it should be Pokemon Square and Pokemon Triangle and Pokemon Pentagon and Pokemon Hexagon and Pokemon Octagon, because there are countably infinite number of polygons.
Yeah, you can just keep increasing it.
Yeah.
No, well, okay. I'm gonna go to like the challenge I have with Nintendo so bad.
I'm playing Pokemon Nonadecagon.
One of the top things is that they announced an HD remake port of a Zelda game, right? As their big like crush it announcement, I would call, which is Skyward Sword. One of the games that I'm trying to remember if it's on my list of games I'm supposed to play to get through the main Zelda games before I play Breath of the Wild, and I'm still so far behind. I think it's on the list, but never have I heard anyone talk about how this is like a must-play game. And they were focused so heavily, it was almost sad to me watching it, about how they're like, look, we upgraded the control scheme from the Wii U, or the Wii that it came out with, where you used the little motion control, to the Switch, where now we have separate controls with the right and left Joy-Con, so that you can have sword swiping and blocking with your shield with the two Joy-Cons. But don't worry, we also made sure that you can play with just a controller. And they honestly said, like, please play this game. Essentially trying to say something like, it is one of those games that was, they stated specifically that it was the last traditional Zelda game to be made prior to Breath of the Wild. And thus trying to say that it had somehow the most technology and the most refined of whatever they were building prior to shifting the gameplay of a Zelda game over to Breath of the Wild. And it just felt so, I don't know, like just wah, please like this from Nintendo.
Yeah, and you know what? Everybody else is remaking stuff. They might as well too, right?
Just boggled my brain that like this was one of their big announcements for the Switch.
So here's, I guess we can, maybe we've got 13 minutes left. I mean, it's Nintendo. I don't really care. I got my Isaac. I don't really need anything else.
Yeah, you've got it for the portability.
For the Switch. Like, I bought Isaac. I can take Isaac on planes and play for 2 hours, and it's totally fine. Where did all the money go?
CEOs,
What
shareholders.
CEOs, shareholders? It's
Yep.
so I'm. You're probably right, but here's what I'm struggling with, right? Inflation is a thing. It hasn't been particularly high for the last 20 years, but it is a thing, right? The last time video game prices increased was like '04
Mm-hmm.
or '05 when they went from 50 to 60. And I'm wondering if we allowed for video games to follow increases in consumer prices or increases in inflation rather than staying stagnant, so the amount you make on every, the amount you make on a game in every subsequent year is less on a per unit basis, right? Because your cost of labor either stays the same or goes up every year, but your income on a per unit basis for the game stays the same. And I just wonder if we let the price of a video game increase by a couple of bucks a year every year, if there wouldn't be more money lying around to get some innovation out of these companies.
The difference.
I think one of the
that
biggest fallacies we have is that there isn't enough money for innovation, that there isn't enough money, period.
Yeah.
Because holy cow, if there isn't gobs of cash going into the pockets of a very small minority at the top who arguably, as always we said, do almost no actual effort, innovation, or change in the world at all. They just have structured themselves in a point where money funnels just to them. And so it's not that there's a lack of funds. If that was ever an issue, Blizzard, Activision would be producing the most modern, amazing, innovative things every possible month of the year because they have gosh darn sacks of money rolling in every month from WoW. We've talked about that for a decade plus.
$2 billion a year at WoW's height on subscription alone.
Right?
World of Warcraft. There's no reason.
No excuse.
There's no reason why every WoW expansion since the beginning of time wasn't a 10 out of 10 experience. Agreed. There's more than enough money.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a money issue.
I'm not necessarily saying that, but we have crowdfunding now, and we have early access now, where we meaning gamers are doing the beta testing for a lot of this product for free.
Yeah.
Right?
Plus, the explosion of the WWW explosion in the early 2000 year, that was incredibly different to other products on the market because it became cheaper to suddenly send out your games. It was no longer about only CDs and cartridges in the back of a console. Instead, it became digital downloads. So the entire production requirement went from massive to nothing in terms of the actual physical production of the medium. Same with delivery and transport and logistics and having partnerships with chain stores such as GameStop and stuff. You don't need any more. You don't need any of that. So the amount of savings they made from that is astronomical, right? Just having a bunch of servers online and that's it. Seriously, that's pennies compared to that, right? It's nothing.
Yeah. No, like I said,
then
resource of
innovation. We talk about innovation. The source of innovation is not money. The source of innovation is the lack of money. It's companies that are brand new, indie, and come from things like crowdsourcing.
You're talking about the motivation to innovate, not just but like the motivation. Because the problem is the companies that make all the money have no motivation. They just need to turn out whatever is enough to make the next profit. The people who are trying to be the up-and-comers and become known are the ones who have all the drive to actually innovate because in order to exist, they have to do something novel. And so that's one of the challenges. And so it doesn't surprise me that Nintendo Direct, to me, was lackluster as heck, that BlizzCon, to me, was lackluster as heck, because these are two massive companies that are basically sitting on their laurels, in my mind. That they don't have anything to really, I think they have things to prove, but they're in a position where they don't feel like they have anything they have to prove, that they have to do anything to make themselves stay at the top of their markets because they have enough fans and people that are just already in it that are going to pay them money for everything. It's one of the reasons why I don't feel so bad for playing games like Warzone, which is in the Blizz Activision store, right, their launcher, because it's a free-to-play game, and I am getting all of the value out of the free aspect of it. You know, the number of hours I put in versus any dollar spent is like, oh, I win, right? And so
sure,
it just kills me that they're still pushing all this. I do want to transition as we get to the top of the hour here to news that's totally different. Don't know if you guys saw, participated in, but I'm curious if you have any interest. And that is that there was a new trailer released for the upcoming Mortal Kombat movie that's being produced. That's being made right now.
Didn't hear about this, no.
I saw it. I saw it was a thing, but I did not look into it any more than that.
Okay, I'm gonna share and play parts of it here. Probably not the whole thing because I'm sure I'll have to do several claims.
This is the thing that spawned the article of why Chun-Li's not in it.
Yeah, yeah. Wait, different game? What? But it's this is one where they talk. It's funny because I've heard various levels of conversation about what they see as quality. But Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema are putting out this film that is in uptake, the newest version, this iteration, this generation's version of Mortal Kombat, right? There have been various Mortal Kombat attempts in the past, several full-on movies, a YouTube series that came out to some degree with various levels of quality. I will comment that based on watching the trailer alone, I'm pretty excited, actually. I'm one of those who... I loved Mortal Kombat in the arcade and the silliness that it is. And even the most recent
looks like
of
Sonya
the games.
Blade.
Yes, that is Sonya Blade.
Liu Kang? I haven't seen Scorpion yet.
You have. That's Scorpion right there now on the screen.
Oh.
But prior to Dead Scorpion. It's prior to Dead Scorpion.
Okay.
And you have Jax, you have Raiden, you have Kano.
Okay.
Okay. You have very quickly.
Wait, Kano's got an eye laser.
Yeah.
Why does Kano have an eye laser?
It's in the game. That's one of his moves. And they've got potentially Smoke. They have Sub-Zero for sure, right?
Okay.
They have Goro in it.
Oh, Melina and Katana are in it.
Well, definitely Melina. I forget if they showed. Right?
Yep.
And so...
All right. The dragon fatality.
Right? They actually have fatalities in it. Like...
nope, I'm watching this.
I had to throw it out there because it's something that I saw and was like, you know what? As cheesy as any of the Mortal Kombat's have been, damn if I'm not sold. I'm in. Right?
I am 100,000% in based on that trailer. Give me more of that.
It looks pretty cool.
I
was never big on Mortal Kombat, but that looks pretty cool.
It's one of those I played since Mortal Kombat 1 in the arcade, right? And my pinnacle was Mortal Kombat 2. Holy cow, if I didn't spend so many quarters. And when that came to the SNES, and I lived for a period of time with a group of friends where we had a SNES and Mortal Kombat 2, and we played tournaments against each other constantly. I started out being like 3rd tier out of 4 in the house, and eventually, when I jacked my ankle and got stuck in the house for 2 weeks solid, became tier 2 to 1, like competitive for number 1 in the house. Mm-hmm. Man, if I didn't love playing me some Mortal Kombat. So I wanted to share that out there for anyone who might have missed it, because I'm actually excited. It looks more true to the actual game than any of the others I've seen. And yeah, even though that's a lot of CGI and not the Mortal Kombat movie Goro that we saw before that was cool but cheese at the same time, effects at the time, I'm really excited for it. Oh, man. I want to bring that up. And from a non-game related level, but a general geek, congrats for all those involved in the U.S. space program at NASA.
Oh, yeah.
For landing the most recent rover on Mars, including what was it called? The Mars helicopter that came in.
Oh, fantastic.
And basically was whatever it was that brought them. I don't know if that's actually something that's able to fly on Mars or not. I haven't read that. But in general, just shouts out to like science, right? I'm always going to advocate for science.
Yep. Now there's somebody working for Ars Technica or The Verge who is watching the NASA TV coverage and looking at shirts to make sure nobody was wearing an ideologically non-compliant shirt. Like Dr. Matt Taylor when they landed something on a comet and all they could talk about was that guy's shirt and drove the man to tears on the most important day of his life.
That was garbage. I absolutely feel like
media.
That's garbage. Yeah, it's people looking to try to find reasons to make noise when it doesn't exist. A whole nother show that we could do for hours on end about how media chooses to cover things.
I'll tell you what. Congratulations to the Mars team landing something on another body in our solar system is really, really hard, and to have done it successful to the point where stuff is being reported back is awesome. So it's congratulations to all of them.
Yes,
absolutely.
So
100%.
I wanted to make sure we ended the show on a couple high notes with that because that's super cool. I don't know. I think it's neat. I like space stuff. I know people who actually work the industry around NASA and space, and I get to see their works involved. People who work on the, safety mechanisms for allowing these things to land on those planets, like the parachutes and things like that. I know people who design that, right? So it's so cool to see them succeed in their work, make it. So
it's just such an achievement that'll echo throughout history. These things. These are going to be things that'll be looked back upon, almost like parents looking back at children doing cute little things. I think one day they'll look back and be like, "Oh, we managed to get our one of our first drones over there. Isn't that adorable?"
Yeah.
I look forward. I hope we get to see a glimmer of that one day. We'll look back and be like, "Oh."
All right. With that, though, we need to close things out this week. I do want to recommend for anyone who's been watching us today and kind of caught the little bit of shade, perhaps, that we provided, or at least our outlook on what these two big companies, Blizzard and Nintendo, provided us in the last week or so with news and updates. We may not have captured everything. We may have missed something and not really understood the importance of what it is that they're doing for us. If that's the case, please let us know. Email us in at VtWShowX@gmail.com, and we will happily engage with you about what it is we may have missed or something that you may have felt even more emphatic about than we did about the coverage and things you're seeing, or some of the things you may have hoped to have seen. Were you looking forward to new hardware? Were you? Were you looking forward to the next innovation numeral value of a game coming out that maybe we haven't seen yet? Let us know what it is that
you love Mario and every single instance of Mario that ever comes out every time it's gold.
Are you waiting
you think
for
I'm an idiot for not thinking so?
Do you think that Nintendo should have finally had the gall to get forward and present the Mario games from Bowser's perspective that we've always wanted, which is really him just wooing the princess and and the misunderstanding that it is this low-life plumber trying to steal what is really true love? Do you really want that story and it just hasn't come yet?
It's Honey Pop Mario. First it's a Goomba, then it's a Koopa, then it's a Shy Guy.
I mean, have you also noticed the resemblance of all of the Koopa kids with the royalty in the family?
Oh, they're as inbred as the Habsburgs.
Sorry. But please, let us know your opinions, because I know these are things that we've loved we've all talked about the things we loved from it. It's not just the discontent you might hear from us now, but we have loved them, and it's more of a goal of wanting something new to love as deeply and as feverishly as we have in the past. So please let us know your thoughts.
I am bitter. I have always thought that we should grade all of these things on a curve. And so it's allowable that the indie dev with a game that's their first game that's in early access is allowed to screw up a few times in the development and the early access of their product. An organization as big as Activision, or as big as the Blizzard part of Activision, or Nintendo, should not screw up in the development of their enterprise or any of the piece parts of that enterprise. And the reason why I'm as mad and throw as much shade as I do is because I think they should be a lot better than they are, and they're not. And so they deserve to be criticized for that reason. So
they could do better.
It's passion, and it's passion out of love.
Yeah, it's we just want it to be better for all of us. And as much as that term is popular now, I guess I have to say I tend not to support simps. And so, have some value to what you follow.
Now. Oh,
it's a bannable term on Twitch, man.
So with that, we're going to run away from here. Ken, could you do us a favor?
Join us next week on Odyssey.
You have been watching, listening, and enjoying ShowX here on twitch.tv/VtWShowX. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We appreciate you guys being here. We always enjoy watching the chat and hanging out with you guys. So you can find everything to do with this show on linktr.ee/ShowX. You can find all of the links to our Instagram, our Patreon, yada, yada, yada. All that good stuff is there, Reddit, and so on as well. We have another show that we do. It's called Where My Prosa. It used to be every Wednesday. After discussions and technical problems for these past couple of weeks, we've decided to go with YouTube only and no longer use Twitch. That's because we simply don't have the technical hardware to host with multiple cameras, multiple microphones, which is the kind of quality we want to provide. And we can't do that on Twitch. We just don't have the computing hardware. We have the peripherals, we have the cameras, we have the microphones and stuff, but we can't. There's not a single computer we have access to that can control all those USBs at once without crashing the computer. You saw the show this week. It was not ideal. The computer just couldn't keep up with the frame rates and just dropped every third frame or something. So we're going to be YouTube only. So keep an eye out on the Versus the World video YouTube channel and subscribe there because that's going to be where we're posting all of our stuff. So check that out. We very much appreciate all you guys listening to that show and this show. Thank you so much for hosting, Wayne. We really appreciate all the efforts you do, especially with the art assets today that I totally bailed on. Thank you for covering me. And thank you for your fascinating conversation and successfully remembering all my titles, Todd. Very much appreciate that as well.
I'm a full service organization, sir.
Nice. And with that, we are all out of here, everybody, and a happy and a very notorious salute to all of you, and we will catch you again next week, everybody. Also, check us in the Discord. I will jump in there for a bit after the show to hear the direct feedback. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye. See you in the next zombie. Good night.
Come on, I found God.